Hello everyone, I'm your speaker Casey and welcome to this week's episode of the Cult Vault. Last week, I told part 1 of the tragic story of the missing children Tylee, Ryan and JJ Vallow. This week I hope to continue telling that story in as much detail as possible. If you haven't listened to part 1, it might be worth going back and having a quick listen. When we wrapped up part 1, we had witnessed Laurie's ex-husband and father of Tylee Ryan, Joe Ryan, dying from a supposed heart attack. We had heard about Laurie's fourth husband, Charles, being murdered by her brother, Alex, supposedly in self-defense. We had heard the transcripts from Charles warning police about Laurie's mental break and JJ's grandparents talking of a short FaceTime call that lasted only around 36 seconds, where JJ seemed coached, looking away from the camera repeatedly before saying, "I have to go." We have looked at the now infamous photo of Tylee, JJ and Alex Cox smiling outside of Yellowstone National Park. This would be the last time that Tylee was ever seen. And we know that JJ just had his last day at Kennedy Elementary School, and that this would be the last time that he would ever be seen. As we pick up from this moment, we dive into a story that becomes darker than anyone could have imagined, with 2 innocent children at the centerfold, along with 2 very dangerous, very guilty parents. Before we begin, like much of the content I cover, I must stress that this episode comes with a trigger warning. It includes themes of child death, abuse and murder, so please listen at your discretion. In part 1, I mentioned that I will include all of the sources I use in my show notes. I also mentioned that a lot of my work is coming from the timeline created by Tylee and JJ's aunt, Annie Cushing. I emailed Annie directly, asking if I could reference her timeline in order to tell this story. She replied saying, "Hi Casey, you can absolutely use anything in my timeline. I've published it publicly on my site. I'm also in the process of transcribing the video interviews and making them accessible. You can check them out on my site too. Thanks for joining the fight for justice for Tylee and JJ." I cannot begin to imagine how difficult this entire story has been for Annie and everybody else in the family surrounded by this tragedy. I hope I can do the story justice. I have also used a lot of the case write-up by postregister.com that I will include in the show notes too. I would also just like to say that where I have cross-referenced the dates and sources used within this episode, not everything may be entirely accurate. Some dates may be off and I apologise for my mispronunciation of some things. In the last episode, for example, I said boys instead of Boise, and I really appreciate people who got in touch to correct me on these things. I also said that this would most likely be a 2-part story, but given how much detail there is and how I didn't want to miss anything out, there will be a 3rd part to this story, so let's get back to it. The last point I covered was JJ being seen on the 23rd of September for the last time, so I will pick up at this exact point. The very next day on September 24th, Laurie disenrolls JJ from his new school in Rexburg, claiming that he will now be homeschooled. When she does this, JJ is not seen with her. JJ's babysitter also contacted Laurie on this day, asking when her services might be needed again. She assumed that when she took the job, it would be a regular thing. Laurie tells the babysitter that JJ had gone to stay with his grandmother for the foreseeable future. Laurie told her that Laurie herself was in Hawaii, which we know isn't true because she'd just been into JJ's school in Idaho. She told the babysitter that her services would no longer be needed. This information came from an affidavit of probable cause. Police detective told East Idaho News, "We contacted this babysitter and she informed us that she watched JJ on the 19th of September. The babysitter understood that her employment was to be ongoing." The most important thing to note about this date is that the 24th of September is in fact Tylee Ryan's birthday. In fact, this would have been her 17th birthday. But the entire day goes by with no mentions on social media, and no family members managing to get in touch with Tylee herself. Tylee had been missing for 16 days by this point. Tylee's older brother Colby contacts Tylee 4 days after her birthday. He would later go on to tell Dr. Phil that it didn't sound like Tylee, and that he asked her later that night to call him. He never received this phone call, but there is a text message exchange which sounds like this. Colby: "Hey Ty, happy birthday, I'm so proud of you. I know you've been through a lot, but it's all going to be okay." Tylee: "Thanks Colbs, I love you." Colby commented that she would usually use emojis here. Colby. Hey, Ty, are you okay? Tylee. I'm good, just tired. Call you back later. Love you. Colby. Okay, call me tonight, please. Tylee. I'm at the movies. I'll call you after. She never called him. Colby. Ty, please call me after your movie. I'm worried about you. Tylee. Worried about me? What? Colby. I just want to hear you talk. Tylee. Okay, this week was just busy. I'll call you soon. Colby commented that he was confused by this, wondering what a busy week had to do with calling him back. Colby. Okay, please call me tonight if you can. Tylee's Aunt Annie, whose timeline we are following, had this to say about family communication. Colby said in his interview with Justin Lum he didn't feel like her text started getting weird until later in October. One thing I really don't understand about the Cox family is how this went on for so long. It will be almost 2 months from this date before Kay and Larry Woodcock requested a welfare check. But Laurie's niece, Melanie, was in Rexburg on the 28th of the 10th to sign a lease and stayed until the 31st. Then she permanently moved into the apartment right next door to Laurie. Yet there have been no accounts of family members calling each other to see if anyone has heard from Tylee or JJ. When I stayed with Laurie in 2018 and visited in 2003, family was in and out all of the time. Most family members lived within minutes of each other outside the Phoenix area, Chandler, Gilbert, and the Santan Valley. Yet these kids went missing and undiscovered for 2+ months because of what appears to be radio silence between family members. By the time the kids were discovered missing, the Rexburg area was covered in snow, and now we are dealing with a pandemic, so they may have to wait even longer before searches can begin again. It's one of the most crushing aspects of this case. It was also around this time that Tylee's Pinterest page stopped getting updated. On the page, you can see a board that Tylee had created called Winter Board. It has fashionable winter outfits saved onto it, including nice, long, warm, baggy jumpers and ripped jeans. Later on in the month of September, Julie Rowe, Chad's friend and fellow Doomsday author who was excommunicated from her Mormon church, went on to speak about how her and Chad had both had visions of Chad's wife Tammy dying. Fox 13 News reported this. Julie Rowe believes in energy and talking with angels. Rowe said she and Chad Daybell had a vision where angels told them Daybell's wife Tammy would die. He would never hurt a child. He's raised 5 beautiful, amazing kids that I love like my own, and he would never hurt Tammy, said Rowe. Daybell and Rowe first met each other in 2014 when Daybell helped publish Rowe's book about a near-death experience she had in 2004. God brought us together, said Rowe. The two became good friends, and Rowe said she would visit the Daybells in their Springville, Utah home. There was a 3-year period of time where Rowe would visit Daybell and his wife in their Rexburg home at least once a month. Daybell and Rowe often talked about a vision they both had years ago where angels told them Tammy would die. He was emotionally distraught, he was crying, and he said that his angels had told him that he was going to lose Tammy, said Rowe. After her excommunication from the church, Rowe said that they distanced themselves from each other. I asked him, do you still see Tammy dying? And he said, yes, I do, said Rowe. Tammy is in charge of finances and covers for Daybell's books. Rowe said Daybell wanted to get out of the business, but Tammy wanted to keep going. He said, I'm ready to get out now, and Tammy doesn't want to get out. When she passes, I'm done. I can't keep doing this, said Rowe. Now Rowe hasn't heard from Daybell and any of his children. She has not reached out to Daybell himself, but his daughter has not responded to her texts. Not knowing where the kids are, Rowe says she relies on her visions for comfort. She believes the kids are alive. I do know the kids are safe. I can see them, said Rowe. I can see their energy and that they're in a bright house. I can see they're in a living room. I can see their comfortable bed at night. Before the end of September, Chad Daybell texts filmmaker Devin K. Hansen saying thanks so much regarding a project to turn one of his books into a film. Hansen told Fox 13 News that this is the last time he would hear from Chad. All subsequent texts from Hansen go unanswered. Up until this point, Chad seemed invested in the project and had travelled to Utah to meet with Hansen about it. The project has since been cancelled. Early October, on the 10th, Laurie would open up a 10 by 10 storage unit in Rexburg. Laurie first visited the self-storage unit on October 1st and signed a $53 per month rental agreement for a 10x10 unit, according to a contract reviewed by EastIdahoNews.com. Surveillance cameras at the facility show Laurie and a man associated with her visited the unit 9 times in October and once in November. Often the man, who appears to be Alex Cox, Laurie's brother, came alone. Security footage shows she only came to the business by herself once, on the day she signed the contract. Over the next 2 days, she returned with a man who appears to be Alex. His silver pickup truck is observed at Self Storage Plus on camera multiple times during October. During one visit, a man and woman, who appeared to be Laurie and Alex, enter the building containing the storage unit. The man looks both ways as the woman opens the door. He quickly walks in and carries out a heavy object. It's placed in the vehicle outside, and the man returns to carry out a tire while the woman closes the door. Between October 6th and October 26th, a man, presumably Alex, visits the storage unit alone 5 times. Cameras show him dropping off for various items, including gun cases, and then, on October 28th, 2 men are seen moving bikes into the unit. Surveillance video shows visitors to the unit would often place things inside and then remove the same item within days. One of the last times anyone visits the unit is October 28th. Nobody comes back for nearly a month, until November 24, when Laurie and a man are seen on camera. They stay for around 4 minutes and leave. Due to a lack of payment, the storage unit and all of its contents are considered abandoned. The items are being held at the business pending the outcome of a police investigation, but will ultimately be returned to extended family members. Self Storage Plus employees have reached out to Laurie multiple times but have been unable to reach her. She has not returned messages. Managers say they are releasing video footage to EastIdahoNews.com from their security company, Elite Surveillance, in hopes that it will help police with their timeline in events and ultimately lead to the recovery of JJ and Tylee. Annie makes a note here in her timeline noting that the storage unit is 350 yards from the Rexburg transfer station, aka the city dump. This day is also the day that Janice Cox, Laurie's mother, allegedly speaks to JJ. Janice would say in the Dateline episode titled Where Are the Kids that she was on the phone to Laurie for over an hour, and during this time she could hear JJ laughing and playing in the background, and that she actually spoke to him too. She holds up a phone bill to the camera with the call in question being highlighted on the page. Annie goes on to say in her timeline that it doesn't need to be said, but she will say it anyway. A phone bill is not proof of speaking directly to JJ, only that a call to Laurie's house was made. The next day, on the 2nd of October, Laurie orders a wedding ring from Amazon using her deceased husband Charles's Amazon account. The same day, Laurie and Chad are seen on surveillance at the storage unit. East Idaho News goes on to report that timestamps on the video show a blue Rogue arriving at 1:25 p.m, but the owner of the storage facility says that clocks were off by 1 hour, so Laurie actually pulled in at 2:25 p.m. She made her way out of the door and towards the building where her unit was, and 2 minutes later, at 2:27, got out of the vehicle with a man that people believe to be Chad. At 2:29, he pulled a tyre out of the back of the Rogue and rolled it into the storage unit. 1 minute later, he and Laurie carried out what appears to be a removable car seat together. They put it in the locker, shut the door, and leave the facility at 2:32 p.m. The entire visit lasts 7 minutes. Annie makes a note here in her timeline saying that Chad Daybell, still married to Tammy Daybell at this time, acts in a matter that you might find salacious for a married man. Later the same day, on October 2nd, Brandon Boudreaux, the ex-husband of Laurie's niece Melanie, is shot at outside of his home in Gilbert, Arizona at around 9:30 a.m. Brandon says someone was shooting paintballs at him from the back seat of a Jeep. Brandon explains to the police that on closer inspection he saw bullet holes and realised that he'd actually been shot at with a real gun that had a silencer. He also realised that he recognised the vehicle. It was a grey Jeep with Texas plates. Tylee Ryan's 2018 Jeep Wrangler that was registered in Charles's name. Tylee's Jeep was often described as green due to the hue. Brandon would later identify the shooter as Laurie's brother Alex Cox. Brandon then took his 4 children into hiding despite the nasty custody battle unfolding during the divorce proceedings of him and his estranged wife Melanie. Brandon hired a PI who followed Melanie and Alex to Rexburg shortly after, but not before catching Melanie dumping items that belonged to the children on the curbside. Annie adds to her timeline here, saying that reporter Nate Eaton offers a plausible explanation for why Laurie and Chad would have been moving a tyre and a removable back seat into the storage unit. Brandon Boudreau said someone shot at him out of the back of the Jeep. The back window of that model of Jeep doesn't open if the tyre is attached. Therefore, it's possible they removed the back seat and tyre of the Jeep. Then Laurie and Chad moved it into the storage unit. Later that same day, an order is placed on Amazon for a silver and malachite ring costing less than $40 in the name of Charles Vallow. The next day on October 3rd, the browser history on the computer which the ring was ordered from shows searches for wedding dresses. Later on the same day, a man who looks like Alex Cox is seen on surveillance at the storage unit where the tyre and back seat are retrieved. It should be noted that Alex was identified in the shooting the previous day. To get from Gilbert, Arizona to Rexburg, Idaho, it's a 15-hour drive or a 1-hour 50-minute plane ride from Phoenix, Arizona to Idaho Falls. If the shooting took place at 9:30 on the morning of the 2nd, Alex must have left soon after to make it to Rexburg on the afternoon of the 3rd, to be seen on this surveillance. The next day, Tammy Daybell visits her parents in Springfield, Utah. She did this, apparently, at Chad's urging. Chad claimed in a private Facebook group that it was divine urging from ancestors that Tammy must visit with her family on this specific day. 2 days later, Alex returns to the storage unit by himself, and 3 days after this, on October 9th, 2019, Tammy files a strange report with Rexburg Police Department. She tells police that, as she was unloading groceries from her car, a man wearing a ski mask appears at the bottom of her driveway in Salem. She says he points what looks to be a paintball gun at her and pulls the trigger several times, but the weapon doesn't appear to be loaded. Tammy explains on Facebook that she asked the masked man several times what he was doing, but that he never spoke. Tammy then yells for Chad and the masked man runs away. Tammy reported this to Fremont County Sheriff Len Humphreys. He goes on to tell Rexburg Standard Journal that investigators believe this was likely to be a prank and they never found the culprit. On this same day, this would be the last recorded day that Melanie Boudreau would see her children following the divorce from her husband and the attempt on his life. The next day on October 10th, Tylee's Venmo account, a digital wallet service, shows a payment to her older brother Colby with the words "We love you" attached. 2 days later, Chad buys rope and a ski mask at Cabela's in Idaho Falls, although this was only alleged and has not been proven or disproven at this stage. On October 14th, Melanie Boudreau contacts her estranged husband Brandon to let him know that she plans to move to Boise. The text reads, "The kids could remain with you in Arizona. You would have to arrange for daycare, and I could have the kids for summer holidays. Or I could take the kids to Idaho and enroll them in school there, and you could have the kids for school holidays. Please let me know what you'd like to do." On October 16th, Tylee's Venmo account shows another payment, sent again to older brother Colby with a heart emoji in the message field. This transaction was removed from Tylee's feed sometime after March 1st, but evidence suggests that it was recorded in time to be placed within this timeline. On this same day, a man accesses Laurie's storage unit and spends around 6 minutes on the premises. And then more tragedy hits. 3 days later, on October 19th, Tammy Daybell suddenly dies in her sleep, according to husband Chad Daybell, who called Fremont Sheriff's Department to report the death. He claims she went to bed with a cough and never woke up. Her death is believed to be natural and no autopsy is performed by the medical examiner. Ron Douglas, Tammy's father, said she appeared perfectly healthy just 2 weeks prior when she had visited. Douglas told Fox 13 News that a grief-stricken Chad had called him with the news. An investigator told East Idaho News reporter Nate Eaton that Chad didn't seem at all curious about how she died. An email written by Chad Daybell after Tammy's death, titled As I See It, said, "My dear Tammy passed away in her sleep early Saturday, October 19. When I awoke at around 6 a.m, it was clear she had been gone for several hours. It came as a shock. I couldn't believe I hadn't been awakened somehow, but all indications are that her spirit simply slipped away during the night. Her face looked serene, with her eyes closed and a slight smile. It was devastating to discover her that way, but I'm so grateful that her death was peaceful. Tammy really was the anchor of our family and our publishing business. We have worked side by side from the moment we married in the temple in 1990. It is safe to say I never would have become an author without her faith in me and her constant encouragement. Tammy herself wasn't a visionary woman, but she believed what I told her and trusted my decisions. She often said that she felt like Sariah in the Book of Mormon, where her faith was often tested by unexpected twists and turns of our lives, but she was grateful when the Lord would fulfill the promises that she had been made regarding our family. She had a brilliant mind, especially when it came to computers. She wore so many hats in our company, from being chief financial officer to operating our websites to designing book covers. I'm still sorting out how I'm going to cope with this tremendous loss, but thankfully I have a son whose mind works like Tammy's and will be able to muddle through these tasks, although not as efficiently as she did. Tammy conveyed to me several messages, and I'm in the process of implementing what she has told me to do. She has indicated that my life has two parts that were planned even before I came to this earth. Tammy was only 49 years old and she had no underlying health conditions. Julie Rowe, the friend of Chad and Tammy's, who claimed earlier that Chad would never hurt Tammy, but that they'd both had visions of her dying, goes on TV to tell Nancy Grace, "About 3 years ago, before Tammy died, he came to me and said he had a vision of her passing away and he thought she was going to die in a car crash. I used to go to their house in Rexburg every month or two to see Chad and Tammy and the kids. I came back to Rexburg to do some work and wanted to stop by, and Chad told me not to. He told me Tammy had been off of her antidepressant medication, that she was irritable and struggling with jealousy, and it's best if I didn't come." Julie also tells Nancy Grace that Chad was texting with another woman in Arizona before he met Laurie, and that when talking about Tammy's death, he told Julie Rowe, quote, "I feel the plan can't move on until the spouses are gone." Justin Lum on Fox 10 Phoenix News reports how Julie Rowe also spoke to reporters about how Chad's daughter Emma confided in Julie, saying, "Do you know what I am most afraid of? My father getting remarried." An article on InsideEdition.com, written by Kaylin Ford, then goes on to say that Chad Daybell allegedly sexually assaulted a female author with whom he worked with while they were in a private meeting in December 2018. An incident that was part of a pattern of inappropriate and sometimes predatory behaviour toward women, multiple sources told Inside Edition. Julie Rowe is an author who published multiple books with Chad between 2014 and 2017. She said that during a meeting and energy healing session with him in Rexburg, Idaho in mid-December 2018, that Chad had forcibly kissed her, got on top of her, and while they were clothed, rubbed his genitals against her body. "I had no idea that he was going to do that to me, and I felt very betrayed," Rowe told Inside Edition. She said she has not spoken about this publicly before. She said, "I felt used, abused, manipulated. I felt betrayed. It was awful." Rowe did not report her sexual assault allegations to police. Inside Edition Digital confirmed with two people that Rowe shared her account of what happened at the time. Those individuals were a member of her security team and Eric Smith, an Idaho-based author. Rowe claimed the assault by Chad during the December meeting came after he made an inappropriate comment to her over the phone in October 2018. Rowe is married with children. She said that other than riding in a car with Chad 2 times during the course of their working relationship, she had never been alone with him before and was shocked by his behaviour. Chad's attorney, John Pryor, did not respond to Inside Edition Digital's request for comment about Rowe's allegations. On October 22nd, in Spring Creek, Idaho, Tammy's funeral is held and her body is interred. On the same day, a man accesses the storage unit again, spending roughly only 9 minutes on the premises. The next day, a memorial service is held for Tammy in Rexburg. Her obituary on the Flam Funeral Home website reads, Tamara Tammy Douglas Daybell passed away peacefully in her sleep on Saturday, October 19th, 2019 in Salem, Idaho. She was born May 4th, 1970 in Pasadena, California to Ronald and Phyllis Cooper Douglas. She enjoyed growing up in South Pasadena and Southern California with her Cooper cousins and living close to Disneyland. She and all her siblings were chartered members of the mentally gifted students of Cerritos Elementary School, enabling her to develop creative thinking skills she used through the rest of her life. She loved putting on family shows that she produced and directed, corralling any family members she could. It was a happy childhood with many memories, including trips to the beach and camping in Elfin Forest. When Tammy was 13, she moved with her family to Springville, Utah. She was an excellent student and she played the drums and clarinet in the Springville High School band. She was the yearbook editor her senior year. Most of all, she was known for her friendly smile and kindness to everyone. Tammy shared a love of books and reading with her family. She created her own library, lending books to her siblings with actual library cards and fines when they weren't returned on time. She loved classical music and learned the songs and words. Then she and her siblings would reenact them. During the summer following her freshman year at Brigham Young University, she met Chad Daybell. They quickly fell in love and were married on March the 9th, 1990. While Chad continued his schooling, Tammy supported the family by working as the secretary for Springville's park department. As part of her job, she typed thousands of handwritten burial records into a computer database. This helped spark an interest in her family history, which later would become her favourite hobby. Throughout her life, she submitted more than 100,000 names for temple ordnance work. She even managed to teach her computer-challenged mother to learn and join in the gathering of family history. After Chad graduated and took a job in Ogden, Utah, Tammy became a full-time homemaker and mother as their family began to grow. She loved her children deeply and encouraged them in countless ways. She often took the children to the public library and helped them develop a passion for reading. The family returned to Springville, where Tammy later became the computer teacher at Art City Elementary. Tammy was a computer genius who also had a talent for graphic arts. In 2004, she and Chad founded Spring Creek Book Company, and Tammy wore many hats as their company grew, juggling her role as chief financial officer with designing the book covers. She was the true backbone of the company, and she was proud of the dozens of books the company has published over the years. In 2015, the family moved to Salem, Idaho, and she became the assistant librarian at Madison Middle School. She later became the librarian at Central Elementary School in Sugar City, Idaho. She was treasured and loved by all the staff and students alike. She served in numerous capacities in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, including as State Girls Camp Director and as Young Woman President. She also served in Relief Society and primary presidencies. She loved the women and girls she was privileged to serve with. Tammy's true focus throughout her life was her family, from serving a delicious dinner each Sunday to remembering every birthday and holiday with gifts. She also loved all sorts of animals, but she especially loved Indian runner ducks. She also raised pigeons, chickens, cats and rabbits, knowing each one by name. She loved gardening, cooking and playing games with her family. Her laugh will be remembered and cherished. Tammy is survived by her husband and 5 children, Garth Daybell, Emma Joseph Murray, Seth Michaela Daybell, Leah Adam Murphy, and Mark Daybell, who was a serving LDS mission in Johannesburg, South Africa. She was a doting grandma to Chase Murray and Jordan Murphy, with a 3rd grandson, Oliver Daybell, on the way. She is also survived by her parents, Ron and Phyllis Douglas, and 4 siblings, Michael, Samantha, Matthew, and Benjamin, and numerous nieces and nephews who all loved her dearly. Funeral services will be held Tuesday, October 22nd, 2019 at 11 a.m. at the Springfield Ward Chapel located in Springville, Utah. A viewing will be held on Monday evening from 6 till 7:30 p.m. at that location. Interment will be in the Springville Evergreen Cemetery. A memorial service will also be held Wednesday, October 23rd at 1 p.m. in the Henry's Fork Stake Center. On October 25th, a friend of Tylee's from Arizona receives a text from Tylee saying, "Hi, miss you guys, love ya." This text was in response to a message sent from this friend to Tylee on October 19th, saying she missed Tylee and had been thinking about her. The friend confirmed this text exchange and provided a screenshot to the Post Register, but has doubts that Tylee was the one who actually wrote this response. The friend said she spelled out her words for the most part. Plus, she would have texted more if I reached out. This was according to a Facebook Messenger question the friend had been asked. I think it would be strange for Tylee to say things like love ya, spelled Luvya, when she previously said to a police officer after Charles's shooting, quote, in retrospect, that probably wasn't a good idea. On this day, the storage unit is accessed again by a man who spends approximately 10 minutes on the premises. This all happens on the same day that Laurie's niece, Melanie Boudreau, had her apartment in Phoenix taken off the market. The next day, on October 26th, the storage unit is once again accessed by a man who spends 11 minutes on the premises. 2 days later, on the 28th, two men who appear to be Alex and Chad are seen again on the premises of the storage unit, moving bikes and other items into the storage unit. Later this day, Melanie Boudreau signs a lease on a new apartment in the same complex as Laurie in Rexburg, Idaho. And by this stage, Alex, Laurie's brother, already has his own apartment in the same complex in Rexburg, Idaho. On October 31st, Halloween, Melanie and Alex fly from Idaho Falls to Phoenix to gather Melanie's things and move her officially to Rexburg. The babysitter texts Laurie one last time, asking if JJ had returned and if her work would be needed. Laurie never responds. This is on the same day that the private investigator hired by Brandon Boudreau, Rich Robertson, sees Melanie and Alex outside of her home in Phoenix taking her children's clothes, toys and bed to the curbside and leaving them there before heading to the airport to travel to Rexburg. Colby also reports around this time how Tylee's communication with him had started to change. He started calling, FaceTiming and texting her all of the time, but she never answered his phone calls. She always had an excuse or a reason why she couldn't speak in person and could only ever text. He told reporter Justin Lum that the text just didn't sound like her. Late October, early November 2019, Laurie and Chad lie about the death and even existence of her children. Rexburg Police Department published witness testimonies and a press release alleging that Laurie and Chad both lied about their children's existence. We are aware that in the weeks after Tammy Daybell's death, Laurie and Chad told witnesses that Laurie's daughter had died a year before the death of her own father, which is untrue. Around the same time, Chad told another witness that Laurie had no minor children. According to an affidavit obtained by East Idaho News in February 2020, law enforcement also interviewed Chad Daybell's parents and Tammy Daybell's sister. The article has no date, but Chad's parents tell detectives that Chad and Laurie had told them in November that Laurie was a, quote, empty nester. Tammy's sister reports that Chad told them Laurie had no juvenile children. It is around the same time that Chad receives a $430,000 payout of life insurance after Tammy's death. It is also around this time that Chad is excommunicated from his church for claiming to be a prophet. An article on the Daily Mail reads, wanted End of Times author Chad Daybell was excommunicated from the Mormon Church after he declared he was a prophet. In the first week of November 2019, Rexburg Police Department is contacted by Gilbert and Chandler Police Departments after the attempted shooting of Brandon Boudreau, asking for help in obtaining search warrants for the 2018 Jeep Wrangler. This was the Jeep Wrangler that Tylee Ryan drove but was registered to Charles Vallow and in the possession of Laurie Vallow. It was believed to be related to a possible attempted murder of Brandon Boudreau. Please note, it is significant that the vehicle Tylee drove was still in Rexburg nearly 2 months after the last known sighting of Tylee. Around this time, Gilbert Police Department request intermittent surveillance on Laurie. A detective reports that JJ was never seen during this month of surveillance in November 2019. It is during this surveillance that two detectives knock on Melanie Boudreau's door and ask about Laurie. 4 days later, on the 5th of November, Chad Daybell marries Lori Vallow in Kauai, Hawaii. This is only 17 days after his wife Tammy's unexpected death. Lori can be seen wearing the silver and malachite ring that had been ordered on Amazon under her previous husband's name. This is also the day that the infamous photos emerge. Lori and Chad can be seen walking along the beach, Chad playing a ukulele while Lori mimics a hula dance. Both of them have massive smiles on their faces. They can be seen clinking glasses of wine together on the white beaches of Hawaii. All this time, Lori's children, Tylee and JJ, haven't been seen since September. Two days after the wedding, Lori and Chad meet with Jeannie Martin about renting a room from her home in Kauai. According to Martin, after claiming to receive a sign from God about moving into her home, she asks about former wife Tammy Daybell's recent death. He answers via a text claiming, "She helped me reconnect with Lori so quickly and it helped my children move forward." Outside of authorities, this is the second source to tell us that Daybell said he had no kids on the island. On November 12th, prior to the finalisation of their divorce, while Lori is in Hawaii, Melanie Boudreau trespasses onto Brandon's parents' property in America Fork, Utah. This is where her children were living while the divorce and custody battle played out between her and Brandon. American Fork police say Melanie's uncle, Alex Cox, drove her to where the children were living in a 2020 Kia Telluride. 2 days later, Melanie would trespass onto Brandon's parents' property a second time, around 10:30 p.m., claiming to have a court order stating she could take back her children. Luckily, this didn't happen. People cite Melanie for criminal trespassing and tell her to leave the property, but then decide to take her into custody for criminal trespassing enhanced by domestic violence. Melanie turns herself in to the AF Police Department and is booked into a Utah jail. Melanie's uncle Alex posts her bail of $1,950. The day after she is arrested, Alex bails Melanie out. On the 19th of October, Melanie and Brandon's divorce is finalised. She doesn't show up to the custody hearing, and temporary full custody of all of their children is awarded to Brandon. Shortly after this, Lori and Chad return to Rexburg after their honeymoon finishes in Hawaii. Despite JJ being withdrawn from the Life Academy back in Phoenix on the 5th of September, Lori accesses JJ's app from his old school on the 21st of November. It's unsure why she did this, but perhaps it was to check whether the news of JJ being missing was making its way around the school or in that area of Phoenix. However, that's purely my speculation. 3 days later, on the 24th, Lori and an unidentified man visit the storage unit. This would be the last visit. They leave a box of memorabilia of Tylee and JJ, as well as a lot of clothing. They are on the premises for only 4 minutes. The next day, Kay Woodcock attempts to log into Charles's emails by trying one of 3 passwords that Kay says Charles had always used. Upon a successful login to Charles's email address, she can see a confirmation email from Amazon for purchases made to Lori's new address in Rexburg. With this new address, Kay could finally request a welfare check on her grandson JJ, whom she hadn't spoken to or seen since the last strained FaceTime weeks before. Despite numerous attempts from Kay to get in touch and imploring Lori to allow JJ to call her, she had not managed to speak to him. This is the day where an official investigation begins into the missing children. The date would be October 25th. Kay and Larry call the Gilbert Police Department in Arizona, who then contact the Rexburg Police Department in Idaho. The Rexburg Police Department respond to the request by carrying out this welfare check the next day at 565 Pioneer Road, Rexburg, Idaho. Tylee wasn't included in the welfare check, the detective on the scene on the day Charles was shot and killed. The same detective who described the ride to the police station as straight up bizarre thought Tylee didn't need to be included in this welfare check because she would have been 17 years old at this point. Chad is at the home when the police arrive. He says he doesn't know where Lori is. Laurie then returns home only to tell the police that JJ is staying with a family friend in Arizona. Annie Cushing's timeline then goes on to say that there is other suspicious activity later released on a 14-page affidavit of probable cause, which is a document obtained by East Idaho News. The points made are: Chad acted as if he didn't know Laurie very well and stated he didn't know her phone number. They had been married 3 weeks prior. Alex told the detectives that JJ was with his grandma, Kay, in Louisiana, which was not likely to be true due to the fact that it was Kay herself who was the person that requested the welfare check in the first place. Alex told officers that Laurie might be in apartment 107. They later discovered that apartment 107 was vacant. Police found Laurie later that day in apartment 175. Chad Daybell tried to drive away while detectives were at the apartment complex, but a detective managed to stop him. Chad told an investigator that the last time he had seen JJ was in apartment 107 in October. He also then admitted that he knew his wife's phone number. This proves that Chad was aware that Laurie had at least one minor child. Laurie tells detectives that JJ was with a friend, Melanie Gibb, the same friend who participated as a co-host with Chad and Laurie on Preparing a People podcast, and co-hosted with Laurie on Time to Warrior Up. They spoke together at Preparing a People conferences and wrote the book Feel of Fire, of which Chad wrote the foreword. Detective Ron Ball stated that this lie delayed the investigation into the whereabouts and safety of JJ by requiring us to take time to investigate a lead that was verified as false. Detectives called Gibb but were unable to reach her. Laurie claimed that her friend and JJ were at Frozen 2 in the cinema. Officers told Laurie to tell her friend to call them immediately. After not hearing back from Gibb that night, law enforcement in Rexburg called the Gilbert Police Department in Arizona. Officers from Gilbert Police Department went to Gibb's home. She was not there, but they managed to reach her by phone. Gibb told them that she hasn't seen JJ for several months. It should be noted that not getting back to law enforcement in a timely manner gave Laurie and Chad a significant time to flee the jurisdiction. Gibb waited 10 days before telling Rexburg Police Department that both Laurie and Chad had phoned her separately and asked her to tell them that she had JJ. Gibb has reportedly retained a lawyer and is cooperating with authorities. Chad's younger brother, Matt Daybell, later tells East Idaho News that he and Chad had not directly spoken to each other since the funeral service in Rexburg on October 23rd. Since that time, I have texted Chad twice. Once when I heard from a neighbour of his quick marriage to Laurie, expressing to him my shock and dismay at this news, Matt Daybell says. Second, just recently, pleading with Chad to cooperate with authorities and reveal the whereabouts of his new stepchildren. On October 27th, law enforcement execute a search warrant for the townhouse of Laurie, discovering both her and Chad are nowhere to be seen. Witnesses say they had no children with them. Law enforcement also searches the homes of Alex and Melanie, Laurie's niece, both of which lived separately but within a few doors of Laurie. Law enforcement search the storage unit, and within this storage unit, they find kids' bikes, toys, photo albums, winter clothes, a backpack with JJ's initials, a jersey with Colby's name on it, and photo blankets made from pictures of Tylee and JJ from infancy. This would be the contents and items that were periodically placed within the storage unit by Laurie and men associated with her. 10 visits were made to this unit between October 1st and November 24th. Also on this day, Alex Cox suddenly returns back to Arizona. Law enforcement arrive at Colby's home to inquire of the whereabouts of Tylee and JJ. Colby goes on to tell reporter Justin Lum that after the detectives left his home, he phoned his mum saying, "2 detectives just came to my door. What's going on?" Colby reports that Laurie replied saying, "I got it. I'll take care of it. Love you." But before ending the call, she finds as much information as possible from Colby about what the detectives wanted. Before this day was over, The Rexburg Police Department would request the assistance of the FBI in their mission to find the missing children, Tylee and JJ. Then we get to Thanksgiving weekend, the 28th of November, a time when families should all be together, and that's exactly where Chad Daybell was. He spent this weekend on vacation with his family in Southern California, travelling there via Salt Lake City Airport. Chad spent part of the weekend at Knott's Berry Farm, an amusement park in Buena Park, California. Photos of him at the park and at the airport were posted on social media, and Lori was not spotted in any of these photos, and her location during this time is unknown. On this same weekend, Lori's brother Alex marries a lady called Zulema Pastines in Las Vegas. According to the owner of A Chapel of Love in Las Vegas, where the ceremony took place, there was little emotion involved. The minister talked about the service, commenting that the thing that stuck out to him the most was their lack of emotional response, going on to say that they were very cold and it seemed just like business. They wanted to get in and out. The owner said the service only lasted about 8 minutes, and their only witness was the chapel security guard. Again, Lori's whereabouts at this time are unknown. Something else to mention about this wedding is that Alex took Zulema's last name. While not entirely uncommon, the motives behind this action remain unclear. The very next day, after her uncle Alex's marriage, Melanie Boudreau, Lori's niece, also gets married to a man in Las Vegas called Ian Pawlowski at the Lucky Little Chapel. Alex Cox, now Alex Pastines, acts as their witness and signs the wedding certificate. On this same weekend, Lori's friend and previous podcast partner, Melanie Gibb, receives an email from Lori full of beautiful pictures of their wedding on the beach. Gibb later claims that she didn't know that they had gotten married. Ian Pawlowski had divorced from his wife in July of 2019, according to his Facebook, but in early December, Ian would text his ex-wife with concerns about his new family. He tells her about the attempted shooting of Brandon Boudreau. The text, posted to Facebook by reporter Justin Lum, reads this: "Don't respond. I need you to encourage Brandon to keep info he gets on the down low until I can get this sorted out. I want to help, but it will be tough if everyone starts figuring out what I'm learning. She didn't know beforehand what was going to happen. They made the attempt, failed, and told her about it after the fact. I understand that he doesn't want the kids around her because of all of this, but I believe if she could see them, it will put a huge dent in the trust with her uncles. She's scared and had been told her 2 middle children are dead. She has a court date on the 11th of December, and I'm trying to get her to go." There are many things to discuss here. When Ian says uncles, I think he must be referring to Alex and Chad, because I don't think that at this time Melanie was in touch with the rest of her family. And Annie had already noted on her timeline the little contact that was being kept with the outside family. Also, when Ian says that Melanie had been told her 2 middle children are dead, I think this refers to Lori's previous delusions of Charles already being dead, and saying that he was possessed by a demon, and that some people around them were zombies. I don't believe that this meant that her 2 middle children were actually deceased. At this point in the story, we reach December. In this month, Lori and Chad take a flight from LA to Kauai on American Airlines. Ian Pawlowski's mother calls him after talking to his ex-wife Natalie, imploring to her son that Melanie was in a cult, that Chad was a cult leader, and that Melanie's uncle had shot and killed a man. Also during December, law enforcement decide to further investigate the death of Tammy, and her body is exhumed and submitted for autopsy. Tammy Daybell's remains are exhumed by the Fremont County Sheriff's Office with the assistance of the Utah Office of the Medical Examiner, and an autopsy is conducted. The warrant states there is probable cause to believe that the hereinafter described property or persons presently located within the hereinafter described location is connected with the commission of public offences, to it, conspiracy to commit homicide, first degree, which occurred on or about July 11th, 2019. Alex's apartment in Rexburg goes back on the market, and the next day, according to an email from Natalie Pawlowski, Ian's ex-wife, to an associate of Brandon Boudreau, Melanie's ex-husband, Melanie is interviewed by law enforcement for 5 hours. Natalie then contacts an associate of Brandon's, trying to find him. Annie describes this as a cry for help as Natalie reveals how scared she is and how scared Ian also was. Natalie and Ian are then interviewed by law enforcement. Ian actually speaks to law enforcement a number of times and manages to shed some light on the belief system in play throughout this case, which we will get into very soon. The FBI then start looking into Laurie, Melanie Gibb, and Richard Jason Mao. Agents dig into Laurie Vallow's podcast. FBI agent notes Jason Mao joined them in the podcast. Mao said that they had a special connection and described her as a gatherer. Mao connected Vallow and Gibb. Laurie mentions how suffering leads to salvation, and even though she doesn't want her kids to suffer, she understands that they have to so that they can see the light. An agent also describes the podcast as not soothing by any means. Shortly after, an FBI agent digs into Richard Jason Mao's professional background. It is also around this time that Laurie's friend and podcast co-host Melanie Gibb informs Rexburg Police Department that both Laurie and Chad had contacted her separately on November 26th and asked her to lie to detectives about where JJ was. Also on this day, Ian meets with law enforcement, this time alone, and restates what he knows for a few other detectives, including Lieutenant Ball and FBI agent Travis. Chandler Police Department in Arizona then serve a search warrant for all of JJ's records from the Life Academy, his school back in Phoenix before Laurie moved him to Rexburg, Idaho. On the 8th of December, Ian texts his ex-wife, Natalie, saying, "I don't know if I can convince her to go to the family court hearing on Wednesday. I'm trying, but she got an answer last night from God himself. Her uncles have her so wrapped up. They're telling her she needs to move to Ammon. That's not going to happen because I'm not going to leave Rexburg. Don't respond. Just wanted to update you earlier because I had a quick second to call. Stay safe." The next day, Laurie accesses JJ's school app again, and the day after that, Laurie and Chad move into a condo in Princeville, Hawaii. The strange thing about choosing this condo is that it is across the street from the townhouse complex that Laurie used to live in with Charles and the kids years before. On December 12th, this story would take another surprising twist, when Alex Cox, or Alex Pastines, Laurie's brother, dies of suspicious causes in Gilbert, Arizona. Zulema Pastines' 25-year-old son, Joseph Lopez, found him unresponsive in the bathroom and reports being unable to turn him over to administer CPR because Alex had lost control of his bowels. He refers to Alex as his mum's boyfriend, revealing he seemed to be unaware that she had married Alex 12 days before. He also didn't know Alex's last name when the operator asks. As part of the autopsy, investigators request an expanded toxicology panel from the medical examiner's office. Annie goes on to say in her timeline that Keith Morrison said detectives wanted to question Alex about the shooting of Charles on the 11th of the 7th, as well as the mysterious shooting attempts at Brandon Boudreaux on the 2nd of the 10th and Tammy Daybell on the 9th of the 10th. But before they could question him, he died too. More than 2 months have passed. If he wasn't questioned during those 2 months, then why? Although cause of death was eventually ruled as a pulmonary blood clot, specifically a pulmonary embolism, which is a clot in the lungs, his case has actually been reopened with speculation that it may be linked to the death of Tammy Daybell, both of which results are still pending or have been unreleased to the public. 6 days after Alex's death, Chad's parents, Jack and Sheila Daybell, are interviewed by Rexburg Police Department. The following day, Rexburg Police Department execute a second search warrant on Alex's apartment. They head in with a forensic team looking for any evidence of JJ being there. Also on the 19th, Ian tells Melanie that he has been speaking to law enforcement and records onto his laptop notes of everything that he has so far told the FBI. The next day, on December 20th, the Rexburg Police Department announced the disappearance of Tylee and JJ and asked for the public's assistance. They also include their partnership with the FBI in this investigation. The East Idaho News website released an article including this information that reads, "They've told us several stories about where the children are, but when we investigate, the children don't exist where they say they should. We don't know where they are at, but we think they are in pretty serious danger." On November 26th, Rexburg Police tried to conduct a welfare check on JJ at their home at 656 Pioneer Road in Rexburg, The article goes on to say that on November 26th, Rexburg police tried to conduct a welfare check on Joshua Vallow, Laurie Vallow's adopted 7-year-old special needs son, at their home 656 Pioneer Road in Rexburg. Investigators have contacted several members of the children's extended family, but no one has been in contact with the missing children since September. Additionally, the children have not been reported to any law enforcement agency. JJ Joshua is a 7-year-old with brown hair and brown eyes. He is 4 feet tall and weighs 50 pounds. Tylee is a 17-year-old with blonde hair and blue eyes. She is 5 feet tall and she weighs 160 pounds. Anyone with information regarding the whereabouts of the children since September is asked to contact the Rexburg Police Department or the National Centre for Missing and Exploited Children. Later on the same day, again Laurie accesses JJ's app from his old school, the Life Academy. There is speculation over whether the investigation going public is what triggered this login, perhaps to see if any news has reached Phoenix. The next day, on the 21st of December, Laurie and Chad are named persons of interest in the disappearance of the children. Brandon Boudreau releases a Facebook post on December the 21st, saying, "On October 2nd, on my way home from the gym, someone sat outside my home and shot a gun at me. They hit my vehicle and missed my head by inches. I have reason to believe that this was related to all of the following events. I will only share things in this post that are public information. Please don't ask for more. Please also understand I know firsthand how scary these people can be, and by sharing I realise it can make us a target. As someone who has spent the last 2 months in hiding to protect my kids, I don't take this lightly, but I want to be a person who stands and fights for truth and justice. I have thought a lot about it and I have to share this. I can no longer sit by when by sharing I might help someone who knows something to come forward. This story is about my wife's cousin, JJ Vallow, born in Lake Charles, LA. My wife's aunt and uncle Charles and his wife Laurie adopted him in 2013. He's a beautiful, intelligent 7-year-old with the biggest heart, most beautiful smile, and has life challenges of a level 2 boy on the autism spectrum. Early intervention allowed him to flourish beyond all expectations. Laurie was a wonderful, loving, attentive mother. Things started changing over the past 18+ months when Laurie began spending all of her time with a new religious group that we refer to as a cult. She eventually deserted Charles and JJ for 2.5 months earlier this year. Charles did his best to save the marriage, of which she had no interest. My wife at this time, Melanie, began spending a lot of time with this group. At the end of June, she demanded a divorce, claiming revelation about things that were not real, and there was no evidence given, just a claim of being told by the Saviour. On July 11th, 2019, in Chandler, Arizona, Charles went to Laurie's home, which he had paid for, to get JJ and take him to school. She and her brother Alex were there. Alex shot Charles twice in the chest, killing him, claiming self-defense. 4 people were there that day: Laurie, Alex, and these 2 missing children. Alex mysteriously passed away on the 12th of December, and these 2 children haven't been seen since September 23rd. Worse still, Laurie already remarried, and the wife of her new husband, Chad Daybell, mysteriously died on October the 19th in Rexburg, Idaho. I'm posting this and articles related to the case, begging anyone who believes in justice to please share my post. Help us shed light on this. Someone out there knows something, but doesn't know how all the pieces fit together. Help me connect them with the police so that we can bring justice to Charles and the other victims. Please join us in a prayer that we find JJ and Tylee alive. Please like and share this to bring the truth to authorities. Please feel free to direct message me with questions about the provided links. 2 days later, on the 23rd of December, Rexburg attorney Sean Bartholick of Rigby, Andrus and Rigby issues a statement on Chad and Laurie's behalf. An article released on East Idaho News website reads, "A Rexburg attorney representing Chad and Laurie Daybell says he's in contact with the couple, but has no information regarding the whereabouts or welfare of the 2 children, 7-year-old Joshua Vallow and 17-year-old Tylee Ryan. The children have been missing from Rexburg since September. On Friday, the Rexburg Police Department announced an ongoing search for the kids and said the parents are not cooperating with officers' attempts to check on the welfare of the children. Both Chad and Laurie, whose maiden name is Vallow, have been named persons of interest in the children's disappearance. The couple is also connected to 2 active death investigations involving both of their former spouses, one in Fremont County and another in Arizona. However, authorities in both jurisdictions say Chad and Lori are not persons of interest or suspects in those cases currently. No charges have been filed against Chad or Lori in Idaho or Arizona. So far, Rexburg police have only indicated they want to talk with the couple to ensure the children are okay. On Monday, attorney Sean Bartholick issued the following statement on the Daybells' behalf. Chad Daybell was a loving husband and has the support of his children in this matter. Lori Daybell is a devoted mother and resents assertions to the contrary. We look forward to addressing the allegations once they have moved beyond speculation and rumour. So at this stage, we have 3 dead spouses, a dead brother, 2 missing children, and an uncooperative, newly married couple who fled the mainland for Hawaii and refused to assist in the investigation of the 2 missing children. This is where I'm going to leave part 2, and although it has been long and still doesn't wrap this story up, I wanted to try and provide as much detail as possible in testimonies and news releases. In the next part, we will conclude this tragic story and work through the rest of the timeline to get us where the investigation stands today. I'll also be including a lot of cult material and a lot of beliefs of the Latter-day Saints that might have actually led to some of these cult beliefs that Chad and Lori have coming to fruition. I've been your speaker, Casey, and thank you for joining me for another episode of the Cult Vault. If you would like to get in touch, you can email me on cultvaultpodcast@gmail.com or at cultvaultpod on Twitter and Instagram. Join me next time where I unravel the history of Synanon, a recovery program that led to mass abortions, forced divorces, and many other strange infractions of human rights. That will then leave us open to finish the story of Tylee Ryan and JJ Vallow. Don't forget you can support me on Patreon at patreon.com/thecultvault. Any and all support is greatly welcomed. Thank you so much, and tune in next time.